Welcome to all new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined by Jason Brooks. Jason, Tuesday episode. We're pushing back part 2 of the Big Vito episode to Thursday due to a crazy week in wrestling. Backlash will be taking a little bit of a back burner. If we have time, we'll talk about it. Not as bad of a show as we expected it to be. But as we left our program last week, the breaking news of Paul Heyman losing creative control for Monday Night Raw was the major topic. We spoke about it for a few moments, but this week we're going to talk about it a lot more. And as WWE was ending Monday Night Raw, major outlets got news that there was a second positive test of coronavirus, and as a result, the tapings have been canceled today. And finally, they're actually doing real testing. So, in a long-winded way of saying, Jay, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better than the WWE is right now. I mean, they're a mess. They're a mess. We've talked about this time and time again. Why are they not testing people? Why are people not wearing masks? You know, it doesn't make any... Why are they putting up this stupid glass? What the fuck's that going to do? Excuse my French. But we have people dying. You know what I mean? If you hear scientists and other projections, we're talking about like 200,000 people may pass away from this thing at some point, right? Like states are, the southern states and some of the states in the West Coast are spiking now with it. Like this is a real serious issue. Yeah. Come on, let's be better with this.
I mean, I put this up on our Twitter at WorkShootPod, and I say this, you know, pretty much every week. I don't try to get super political on the show. We've had our comments of the last couple of weeks with the importance of race and responsibility, everything that's gone on with the former gunner of TNA, his remarks, and a lot of stuff that have gone on. But was that super PAC for the Trump campaign from the McMahons really worth opening up the state of Florida? I mean, over the last week, we've had, 2,000 plus a day cases. I mean, the people who want to pretend that COVID doesn't exist want to say it's now that there's more testing, more results are coming in. That's BS. I mean, you know, we had quote unquote fans there yesterday, and now WWE is saying, I'm going to my soapbox. I apologize for 2 seconds, but now they're saying that there were no real fans there. They were friends and family, and they weren't next to the wrestlers. But we saw people that were not trainees there. There were old people there. I mean, if we're gonna have this stuff going on, and Ric Flair is one of the greatest talkers in the world. Ric Flair, who's 70 plus years old, who has not been in the greatest health over the last couple of years, almost died. There is no reason for him to be there. And the fact that, and you know, you may want to believe or not believe, you know, the Sean Ross Sapps of the world, who has broken quite a few stories. He put out on Twitter last night that Ryan Satin knew before some of the workers in the company.
They found it on social media. The workers found it on social media. You're a billion-dollar company. This isn't a mom and pop shop.
I mean, like I said, I don't want to be doom and gloom. And like you said, Raw was slightly better than usual. I mean, I don't know how good or bad it was. I thought it was fine. But you know what? Let's be honest here. This company has a responsibility, not just to its shareholders and how much money the stock is each day. I have no idea how good or bad it did today. I mean, I could take a quick look as, you know, at some point during this hour or 45 minutes, however long we talk today. But we have responsibility to the public and to the people who work in that company of what's going on. And they should not be fined. And it's BS if you tell me that they did not know till 10:52 Eastern time yesterday when the report came out that someone failed a COVID test. That's, if you want to tell me that's true, I've got 52, 54, you know, an island to sell you. You know.
Yeah, I'm going to read their statement. This was about the masks, and this is WWE reporting about, you know, basically what's been going on. This is their statement. Fans have not been in attendance at WWE events since March 13th. Yesterday, a select number of friends and family were permitted to attend WWE's TV production. These individuals were required to participate in medical screenings. By the way, what are medical screenings? Because a lot of people are asymptomatic. Asymptomatic meaning you don't have any symptoms. Okay, they were required to participate in medical screenings prior to entering the closed set at our training center and were kept apart from in-ring performers and production personnel. Attendance was below 20% capacity, and social distancing guidelines were adhered to with at least 6 feet apart. Thus, face masks were not required. I don't know, Corey. I've watched some of these shows with the NXT people there. They're not 6 feet apart.
God, no.
They're not 6 feet apart from each other. And this is such an easy thing to spread. And now some states like Illinois right now, thank goodness, we're like really doing well. But this is very easy to spread still. The idea that we take people's temperatures and say, oh, they're good. There's so much irresponsibility here that we have talked about on this podcast for weeks and months since it started. You have to test everyone. That's the only way you know if people don't have it. And there's still a chance people could have it, regardless. But you have to at least test everyone to see who has it and who doesn't. And the fact that they're not doing that is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And what's going to happen if there's an outbreak, some of their big stars could have it. Someone could pass away from this. Then what do they do?
Yeah. I mean, so I looked. I mean, the stock is down almost $1. So, I mean, the stock is taking a hit today. I mean, the market's up almost 600 points. So, stock is taking a hit. So, there is, people, I guess, negative press as a result of this. So, that's at least a good – not that you want to see anybody lose money or whatever, this or that. But you know what? As of 2:40 p.m.
Well, I mean, they're doing all this for money, right?
Absolutely.
They were doing all these shows for money. And Dave Meltzer said maybe, we said this last week, maybe they should have been better off not having shows for a while and planning this out. Now, obviously, it looks like there's not going to be able to be fans in attendance maybe for a little longer, as I think Florida's got a spike in cases and things like that. But, I don't know. I think what WWE's done is ridiculous.
Agreed. I mean, like I said, we'll get in a moment. We'll move on to the Paul Heyman side of this, of course. But I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, maybe I'm the only one who noticed this, and I'm sure I didn't. But when the Street Profits did their entrance last night, which was a very nice entrance, going through the crowd and everything, I'm pretty sure when they were shaking hands with the developmental talent, there were the family and friends people that were there. They were shaking hands with them too. I'm almost positive I saw that. So I mean,
but here's the thing, Corey. The family and friends people, it doesn't matter. The NXT people didn't get tested. No one got tested. So anyone could and these are all really young, healthy people.
Exactly.
So to me, it's almost unconscionable at this point that they could not have people get tested for this virus. And they are wrestling each other. They're in locker rooms. They're in close spaces together. Nobody's wearing masks. I think it's unconscionable that they're doing it. And I think it's morally reprehensible and irresponsible. And I hope that they change their minds and change things up. And, we've talked about this kind of relationship that I'll speak for myself, this relationship that I have with the WWE and doing this show and watching this product, knowing they do some really morally reprehensible stuff or have in the past. And this is just another thing of like, God, do you want people to stop watching this? Do you actively want more people to stop watching it? You're having empty arena shows. You're having people not wear masks. You're not testing anybody. People eventually are going to start to get pissed and say, I don't want to watch this shit. Like, I don't want to watch this show. They're doing irresponsible things with their company. What happens if something happens to one of their performers? Sami Zayn's not there. Roman Reigns isn't there. I think it's ridiculous. And hopefully, unfortunately someone had to get COVID for this. Hopefully this changes things and they start to test, because it's ridiculous.
I mean, you saw Mojo Rawley put up on Twitter today. He put up on his Twitter that he was tested this morning. You saw him get the nose swab. So, I mean, we saw that the tests actually are happening. So that's a good thing. I mean, we'll see where this all goes. I mean, they canceled tapings for today. NXT hopefully will tape tomorrow. And then I guess they taped on Monday, they taped Main Event, which, nobody watches. And they taped Smackdown for this week and Raw for this week. So we have this week's programming in the already done. We may or may not have a 205 Live, which if we don't, sorry. And then we'll see what happens going forward. I mean, it will be interesting to see how all of this does play out. And it's funny, all of these WWE marks, and yes, sometimes you can call us marks. I try to think of us as slightly smarter fans, and this is the podcast for the smarter fan. But you have all of these people who love to defend WWE does no wrong. They're like, well, what is, AEW's not doing anything different. New Japan's not doing anything. No, it's the exact opposite here. New Japan shut its doors for almost 4 months, and now they're not doing as, stringent testing maybe as AEW is doing. AEW and the UFC of the world, they're doing actual testing every time they come in. Yeah. New Japan, they just started running shows. When the first night they went, and actually they had, when they had, their 6-man tags match, the people who are in the ring, they actually stood outside the ring until somebody was ready to be tagged in.
Wow.
So much differently. I mean, and the idea of, and I know there's people saying that the thing with the masks is being said this wasn't as big of a deal. You know what? When people start coming back to shows in Japan for years, people since SARS, people have been wearing masks to shows. The idea that it doesn't look good for TV. Apparently, Vince McMahon doesn't want people wearing masks. I mean,
there's a pandemic.
Exactly.
There's a pandemic. It's like and I know whatever political. It's like Trump not wearing a mask because they don't want to look weak. It's a pandemic. We're showing the audience. We're showing people, hey, this is what's going on. And I know the idea of being reminded of the pandemic when you're supposed to be enjoying and watching a show, but that's what we're going through. And that's okay. And it's okay to say, this is what's happening. Be real with the audience. There's no reason to be fake with the audience anyway, because we all know what's going on. We're all experiencing it.
Yeah. And so, like I said, my last point on this very, very quickly is I think that one of the reasons why AEW and New Japan have a better relationship right now with their fans than the WWE is the fact that they're being a lot more open with their fans on this stuff is going on. AEW says the words COVID-19. New Japan is talking to their fans about what's going on. WWE treats their fans, yes, all wrestling companies treat their fans at times like idiots, absolutely. But WWE basically treats this fact as if COVID-19 doesn't exist. I understand wrestling is a fantasy and, it's sports and everything else is the outside of reality. You're supposed to forget when you watch TV shows. But this is real life. The idea that we're supposed to the idea COVID-19 doesn't exist, we're beyond that at this point,
I mean, Corey, I've been, watching soccer, and, when these guys are not playing, first of all, they're 6 feet apart, in the stands because it's empty stands, and they're wearing masks, right? That's what they're doing. And when the NBA starts up again, baseball apparently is never going to start, but when these sports start up again, we're probably going to see the guys wearing masks, and they should. This is just what's happening. And with the NXT, developmental guys, I mean, there's a lot of people. They should all be wearing masks. I don't know. I think we're kind of beating a dead horse. I think we're really solidly in agreement here that we hope they change things up because they need to, because it's a morally reprehensible thing, in my opinion, what they're doing, because lives are at stake here.
Yeah, so and like I said, as more information comes about, we'll continue to share and retweet all the different stories that are going on about this at WorkShootPod on our Twitter and our Facebook page. And be sure to, if you any stories, be sure, tag us on them and we'll talk about them as we go along. Actually, one more thing about this, and this will go into our next story. Tonight on WWE Backstage, as of right now, CM Punk is supposed to be one of the hosts on there. WWE Backstage is a Fox show. I'm very interested to see. They have not censored him at all since he's been on the show. When it's come to Black Lives Matter last week and everything else, do you think they're going to give him an open mic and allow him to talk about these failed tests on COVID-19? Or do you think they're just going to be like, we're not bringing this up, and all of a sudden they're not going to let him talk about this? I mean, you got him on the program tonight. I mean, that's going to be very interesting if it doesn't get brought up at all.
That's a great point. I don't know, Corey. That's a really, really good point. I think they're going to let Punk talk about it. I think that's what they've built the show as. So I think that if they're censoring him, he's probably going to be like, I don't need to be on here. I have enough money. I don't need to be on here. everyone has to remember, CM Punk has done a good job of saving his money. AJ's successful. She has a book. They don't have kids. Like, they're good. So I think if they start to censor him, and maybe he doesn't have an opinion on it, maybe he does, but I think if they censor him, I think he's going to say, why am I doing this? So who knows? Maybe they bring it up. Maybe they won't. But it'll be interesting to see for sure.
And another thing that may talk about him tonight on WWE Backstage is the recent departure of Paul Heyman from creative. So, and we spoke about this at closing last week, but now that we have a little more information, I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, we had our first taste of last night. I don't know what's going to happen. What's your initial thoughts of Paul Heyman now we've had a couple of days to really digest him gone?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see Aleister Black yesterday. We only saw Murphy and Austin Theory for 5 seconds. We saw a lot of the Big Show yesterday. We saw a lot of Randy Orton yesterday. We saw Christian yesterday. We saw Ric Flair yesterday. Are you seeing a common theme, right? Going back to the older guys who we're familiar with, who the fans are familiar with, Shelton Benjamin, going back to the older guard who we're familiar with, who we get, who we understand. So now it was a good show yesterday. I actually think it was a solid Raw. That being said, you do have to develop talent for the future, right? We do have to see guys who could be stars in the future. And it's really hard to do it no audience. That's why, to me, this is the time to do it. The time to do it is now, while everyone's going through this. Experiment with new guys. See who gets over. I think this is going to be a lot of Vince. This is going to really be the Vince show. And yesterday, it got off to a decent start. But again, that's still storylines kind of left over from Heyman, right? So let's see how in a couple of weeks this is. They said that they were going to make some changes yesterday. Maybe those changes included having Christian a part of it. I thought he was retired from concussions. Now, if you looked at the kick that Orton gave him, he didn't come even close to touching him, which was good, which is a really good save. And I don't mind if it looks ridiculous there because you're keeping a guy safe. But and the ending segment was great. Orton's been really, really good. So I'm not killing him by having Orton involved, but I do think that's what we're going to see more of. I do think we're going to see more of Orton, more of the older guys, which you could say is, not a bad thing. But, guys like Aleister Black, we'll see what happens with Andrade. We'll see what happens with Angel Garza. Will these young guys get pushed, or will they be, Ricochet, Cedric Alexander? We haven't seen them. Are we going to see them again? So, it's one of those things where I think they were trying to do different things and build some momentum, and now that's completely changed again.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess it's 20 years ago when Heyman was in charge of SmackDown. He had the SmackDown 6, which was built around Mysterio, Benoit, Kurt Angle, Chavo, and Eddie Guerrero. That was his core 6 guys.
Yeah.
And the rumor backstage was when he had his basically a 6-pack of guys that he called the what was it? I think the catering 6 basically.
Yeah.
Which was Selena Vega, Buddy Murphy, Aleister Black, Apollo Crews, and I believe it was the APA, who unfortunately got hurt. But it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen. And they were all basically never used, and they were all basically in catering. And when he came over to Raw, these were the guys that were kind of being pushed. So it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen now that they're gone. I mean, and the idea was he told Vince when he took over, it was going to be 18 months to put over these young guys. And one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about, because we found out that basically right before we were ending the show last week, do you realize that he took over the job basically the beginning of June, and he got fired beginning of June? He basically had the job for a little less than a year.
And here's the other thing, and this is what we're hearing from Dave Meltzer. USA was not happy with this. They were not happy with this change because they're trying to build the next Stone Cold, the next Rock. Randy Orton is who he is. I mean, I think I really think Randy Orton's been great in the last year or so since the Kofi feud. But he is who he is. He's not bringing in any new viewers. He's not a mega star, right? And they're trying to build a guy who maybe the audience is really going to get into. You never know with young guys how this is going to happen. People are still talking about CM Punk. The man's been retired for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
He's a superstar. And so I think they're working on trying to build someone like that. But now we're back to the old guard. And it's hard to build a superstar when you're not giving them the opportunities. And Heyman tried to give these guys the opportunities, and now that's all by the wayside. I remember we predicted this wasn't going to last very long, you know, and I get it. The ratings have not been good. But it sounds like more than the ratings, and this is one thing that we haven't talked about, there were just real creative differences with Vince and Heyman. They just did not see things on the same level. Vince, I don't think particularly liked Heyman, which is interesting, right? Like he gave him a shot years ago. I think he did a really good job years ago, but he ended up getting fired. Then they brought him back, and now they're having him do the same thing again. It's like, it's such an interesting thing with Vince where he gets annoyed with people and then gets rid of them and then brings them back. I mean, I guess that's how business works oftentimes, but to me, this like inconsistency, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, their relationship seems like it definitely had some issues.
I do think there's also one thing that we're forgetting about this. What also closed down recently that diverted his attention now that he has more time to think about the WWE?
Yeah, the XFL.
End of the XFL, no longer a need for Heyman. I think that's a very key part of this.
Yeah, so he hired Heyman kind of at the, you know, when he was like the XFL, we're really going to get rolling with it, which makes sense. Last summer, they want to get everything in place for what happened. Then they go bankrupt. Now Vince is back, and he's like, what's this? What am I watching here? Who is this Aleister Black? Why does he have tattoos all over him? Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense.
And you know,
so you combine XFL, the ratings, Vince and Heyman's relationship, Vince now having it just being around more, and you know, there you go.
Now, what I'm going to give you a list of a couple of people here, and I want you to tell me who do you think is going to survive? Well, not survive, but who do you think will survive? I guess Heyman people would look like we're getting somewhat pushes. Some of them were stop and start over the time, but Liv Morgan, you saw she took the pin, and she looked like she was getting stop and start, but she seemed like she was a Heyman project. Shayna Baszler, who basically has disappeared. I know you had the Nia Jax push this month, but Shayna looks like she's disappeared. Bianca Belair, she was brought up. We've seen her basically twice.
She hurt?
No.
Why hasn't she been there? Or maybe they don't want to push her. Maybe when they push her, they want to push her to the title. I don't know. But anyway, go ahead.
All right, so we got the three of them. Alexander and Ricochet lost to Thorne and what's his name? They've never been seen again. Umberto, I got Dimples. Kairi Sane and the Street Profits. Those all seem to be Heyman, projects on Raw.
I mean, maybe Black.
Black was part of the Six, so I mean, but those weren't people who were, part of the craft services Six or whatever we call them. So.
No, Black was part. I thought he was listed as.
I'm saying those are people that are outside of like the craft services Six or whatever,
Yeah. Well, as far as a person who gets the push,
yeah.
I mean, let's go through them one by one, right? Ricochet and out. So Baszler, they've talked about heating her up at some point whenever they have her go for the title. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good way to have Asuka. I mean, there's basically just heels on the women's side. Liv Morgan is, you know how I feel about her. So there's really no baby faces, even though, whatever. So, I see Baszler eventually getting pushed. Kairi Sane, she's basically the best wrestler who they just decided they don't care for or whatever, which is crazy to me. But maybe that changes. Who knows? Maybe we're Bruce Prichard, that changes. Who else do we have? Ricochet and Alexander. Their fate sounds like I don't want to say it's sealed, but I don't see where they're going with them. If they're losing to Brendan Vink, a guy I never heard of and doesn't seem particularly good, I don't see where they go with them. We talked about Black already. I think that's someone they do push. So yeah, I mean, and you can give me Carrillo. I think he's been stopped and started, and I think he's just not. I think I don't see it with him. I think he's a great athlete. I thought that when he was in NXT, and he's a good wrestler, but I don't see it with him personally.
I mean, I would. I mean, would you be surprised in the next 2 or 3 weeks Apollo Crews loses the title? He seemed like a Heyman project. I mean,
well, it seems like yesterday they definitely gave. I think MVP sounds like he's trying to get some influence. I mean, so it looks like Crews did win by cheating, and MVP basically said, you're gonna need my help to win and whatever. So maybe they're teasing Crews being in the stable, which if they do, I think it'd be a really good move. I think if I said this on Twitter at Work Shoot Pod, if anyone needs a mouthpiece, it's Apollo Crews because I think he's a good wrestler. He looks like $1 million, but I mean, he's got the charisma of this hat that I'm looking at right now, my wife's hat. He just has absolutely no charisma. So I think I could see Crews keeping the title, but them doing some type of stable with MVP.
I mean, I don't know. I think there's mostly a better chance that they take the title off and put it on Shelton, and Shelton becomes part of that stable with MVP.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
So before we move on, let's get to the other side of this. Bruce Prichard taking over control. Most people thought, I know you haven't been a huge fan of it, and you weren't watching as intently before I made you go against your will, suffer
bully me, but I kept up with SmackDown. So I knew there's a reason why I hadn't been watching it, because I've been keeping track of the product. Go ahead.
The best angle most people thought, including myself, at the time was the Otis storyline. And of course, when the cuts came, the person who was responsible for the Otis Mandy storyline was let go. And once she was let go, the storyline went to horseshit. Let's put it honestly. Has not been nearly as good.
Absolutely not.
So what storylines on SmackDown have really been good? Basically what I'm asking you is, do we have any hope, and what examples can we say has been good on SmackDown that gives us faith that Bruce Prichard knows what the hell he's doing in 2020?
Sonya Deville. I mean, I think she's a legit woman. Yeah, she's becoming a star before our eyes. So Sonya Deville would be someone who I would give him credit for.
Okay.
I did like the Brian Wyatt storyline back in the day. Now, they say a lot of that storyline was Brian and Wyatt's own ideas, so I don't know if you can, but I do think that was interesting. I don't know if he was in charge of the Kofi Randy Orton storyline, but I think that was interesting. Again, that might have been those guys kind of coming up with it themselves. I don't know. There's not a lot I've been impressed with him. Shorty G, King Corbin.
So you kind of see what my point is here. I'm not sitting here going, woo, we've got Bruce Prichard at the helm for both shows. I mean,
and listen, he knows more about wrestling. He's forgotten more about wrestling than we'll ever know, right? So this isn't a Bruce Prichard as some dummy, and Jason and I, or Corey and I, are going to come in and be the bookers and whatever. But it is a matter of, one, should he be stretched into 2 shows, right? Is 1 show enough? And also, is he even going to be running Raw? Is he even? It sounds like he's going to be helping Vince on Raw while running SmackDown. That's what this sounds like to me. So you're stretching this guy out thinner. The stress level of this guy is going to be even higher. His ideas have had, varying levels of success, we'll say. And now you're going to put him on Raw? It doesn't make sense to me. Also, when people have said this on Twitter, why can't they get someone new in? Why can't they bring someone new with different ideas? Why is it the same recycled guys always? And I respect Bruce Prichard. I like his podcast. I respect his work that he's done in the past. But why are we recycling the same guys? Put someone underneath Bruce Prichard who is going to be the next guy. The next guy that you're going to put as your lead writer or whatever. Why is it the same recycled guys every time? And I get it. Vince is like almost 80. He believes in the guys he believes in, and loyalty is a big thing for him. But give someone else a shot.
I agree. I mean, and this is more women, more diversity. I mean, this is just more.
They fired one of the only women writers they had.
Yeah.
She gone.
I mean, when Kofi won the title, I mean, the Corner podcast from a couple of years ago, they had I forgot the gentleman's name, but they had the only African American writer that was in there who pitched the Kofi storyline, and he's no longer there. I mean, he moved on with better opportunities, but I believe that he said at the time he was the only African American writer in there, and men were writing, the women's storylines. That's why a lot of times you have women be called, bitch every 3 seconds, and then this week, which was very different, you had, Lana be called a thought. I mean, so I mean, it's not like you have a lot of diversity in that room. So I mean, like I said, this isn't Corey and Jason shitting on WWE for now. That's not what the.
I mean, that's what it's been. I did say Raw was solid yesterday.
That made one of us say that, but like I said, I mean, we don't have all the answers, but there are problems. We're hoping that the best does happen here.
Corey, here's the thing. I want to say this too.
Sure.
I've had a couple of friends I've reconnected with recently who were old wrestling fans back in the day who are still watching. Corey, they don't watch WWE.
Yeah.
They watch NXT and they watch AEW. They don't watch WWE. The empty arena, all the stuff that we're talking about. We wouldn't be doing this show if it was just WWE. We'd be sitting complaining every week. And the thing is, there's never been more talented wrestlers in the company probably than there are now. And their ratings are still in the toilet, and they still aren't building stars. There's reasons for that. This isn't happenstance, right? It's $1 billion company. And the
ratings were in the toilet before Corona.
And that being said, they're still on pace to have the most profitable year they've ever had as a company.
Absolutely.
So there's that. What do we know?
Exactly. And we're the sheep that just keep on coming back every week. We're the loyalists beyond loyal. So when Backlash, good show. Didn't think it was a great show. One of the things that came out of the show was Edge went and within reshoots tore his tricep. Will be out most likely until next WrestleMania. He underwent successful surgery. Wanted to get your take. What'd you think of the match? Well, did he deliver?
Yeah, I thought the Edge match was really good. So we'll start with positives. I thought it was a really good match. I thought there was really good storytelling. It was a good paced match. For two guys who aren't, they're not going to be doing a bunch of flips and crazy moves and whatever. I really thought it was a tremendous match that told a really, really good story. I think that's a match you could have had without any fans, and it would have been a really good story either way. I thought all the ambient noise was the issue. I thought even the announcers at points were too over the top with it. I thought Joe did a really good breaking down the actual wrestling part of it, guys getting tired, working on body parts, the psychology. But then you got Tom Phillips talking about how this is the greatest match ever, and it just really took away from it. Then you throw in whatever this crowd noise was that they piped in. It sounded awful. It sounded absolutely terrible. So, that was a big negative. And honestly, it took away from the match for me. It really did. That being said, it was a great match. It was absolutely not the greatest match ever, but it was a great match. The guys worked really hard. And so, yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, Edge got hurt, so we're not going to be able to see, what happens in the future. I guess the idea was that they were not going to have this match at Backlash. They were going to have this match at, SummerSlam or another pay-per-view. But because of coronavirus, because the lack of stars they have on the show, they decided to move this up and put the moniker of the greatest match ever to sell it. So, I think it was interesting. So, good match. Definitely some negatives in there. It's a bummer that Edge got hurt, so we'll have to wait for a third match.
Yeah, I thought it was a solid match. I thought I don't know how to judge a match like this when they took the very best parts of it. It's like was it a really, really good WWE main roster match? Absolutely. Is it the best match the two of them could have after 9 years of Edge being out of the ring? Absolutely. Was there way too much hype going into it with the moniker? Sure. But I think it's hard to judge a match like this because it wasn't one fluid match. This was a match that they took the very best parts of and combined it together. They taped this match over, like a 12-hour period. And like I said, he wound up hurting himself and tore his tricep in reshoots. So I don't know how you judge this. I mean,
that judging it based off that, you're right. I mean, I thought Bryan and AJ was a better match. I mean, I'm gonna put that out there for sure. But yeah, no, you're right. That the reshoots obviously have a big factor in that.
Yeah. So I mean, and as an overall card, I mean, I'll be honest. I work on the weekend, so I did not get a chance to see the whole entire show. I mean, I saw a couple of the key matches. I thought the show, from what I saw, it over-delivered. I thought the show was better than I expected. Going into the show, I didn't expect much. I didn't think the build for the show was great. I thought that the world title match for Raw was much better than expected. I think the chemistry that we had with Lashley and Drew McIntyre was a lot better than I ever thought it could be. I mean, I know they had good chemistry back in the day in TNA/Impact.
I mean, that was one of Lashley's best matches he's had since he's come back to the WWE. Maybe his best match.
Yeah, and you know what? As a result, I think they most likely ended that story. But, if they wanted to go one more month with Extreme Rules before they most likely go to, because I think where they're going to is Orton versus Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't mind seeing, an Extreme Rules match between Lashley and McIntyre.
That's probably where they're going. I mean, they've done a great job with Lashley. Let's talking about a positive. I think MVP's been great. I think he has been maybe, which besides Rollins, and I'd say Orton, but Orton hasn't been on there every week. For me, and I know you have your feelings about Rollins, I think Rollins and MVP have been the best thing about Raw over the past couple of months. I think MVP's been spectacular. I think he is why we talk about what managers can do. Now, it helps that he was a performer, and so he kind of has that cachet. So he can say, I was one of the longest reigning U.S. champions of all time, that he said to Apollo Crews yesterday. But I think he's been so valuable, with that. And he's made Lashley look, I don't know, I feel Lashley's more legitimate. If this was Lashley 6 months ago and they said he's challenging for the world title, I would have said this is dumb.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel that way.
Well, think about this. I don't remember how much you remember because we were doing the podcast at that point. Lashley as world champion at the time TNA with MVP as his mouthpiece back then, he was cool.
Yeah.
He was cool. So that's the two of them together is a really good 1-2 punch. I don't know if I want to see Lashley as champion, and I think you said this on our Twitter workshoot pod. I don't know if Drew McIntyre is working because he's too cool for school as champion. I'm not sure if I want to see Lashley as champion right now, but I don't mind seeing Lashley as an upper mid-card guy challenging for titles.
I agree, and and if he got to run with the title, I would not mind it. But the thing that does, sorry to interrupt you there, but the thing that does scare me is, and it's going back to our secondary story of the day, how does this all change now that Heyman is no longer in charge of this storyline? Where does this go? I think MVP's hold in things is pretty legit. They already talked with him yesterday about doing the stable. I think MVP's got some cachet there.
I hope so.
I think they watched the show and they're like, shit, if he wasn't on the show, it'd be almost unwatchable, right? So I think they know they need him. And so I think he's got a little bit of cachet there. So I don't think that, his push, I guess, or TV time will be really taken away. I think he'll still be an influential part of the Raw brand moving forward.
Yeah. So like I said, overall, thought it was a good show. I want to get one thing before we start to close out this show. And this is something that people have gone back and forth. What was your thoughts on the cinematic match on the pay-per-view on Backlash?
That was one of the worst things I've ever seen in wrestling.
Okay.
I didn't understand it. It was stupid. It wasn't funny. I think some of their segments where they were playing each other in like different sports, I thought was like goofy, but like, it's not a big deal. What they did yesterday was ridiculous. Put that on a Raw, put that on a main event, put that on a gimmick show. You don't put that on a pay-per-view. I thought it was terrible. I didn't even understand it. You can see Vince in the background laugh. Oh, this is great. I thought it was absolute trash.
You see, I don't disagree with you, but my problem with it was that it went too long. Like at the beginning, I thought it was kind of funny, like the two of them going back and forth. The first like 4 or 5 minutes, I was like, all right, this is clever. It's there some gags and stuff. They're fighting in the back, everything, some goofy stuff, and they're paying off some of the flashbacks of things that happened over the last couple of weeks. They just kept on going and going and going. It just would never end. And then you're just making Tozawa, who looked like yes, I know Tozawa, and I mentioned this in past weeks with the Cruiserweight tournament, where on Wednesdays he looked like a star during that tournament, going 2-0 to start it off, and then on Mondays he was basically a job guy. But then you had Tozawa look like a joke with these ninjas and stuff. But I mean, like I said, at the beginning I thought it was entertaining, and it just wouldn't end. So I mean, at first I thought it was entertaining, and then it just was criminally just wouldn't stop, the criminal death. But
it was. I thought it was terrible. Yeah. I absolutely thought it was terrible.
I just wanted to get your opinion on that, and
yeah,
I'm looking forward to on Wednesday, Shotzi and Tegan going up against Banks
and Bailey. I agree. Bailey. That's like the match of the week that I'm looking forward to the most. And again, I think back to when they first won the titles last year, how they said they were going to defend them in NXT. And I was so excited for that because that's a chance where you could help make a couple of stars. Now, I don't know if you saw this picture circulating around with Ruby Riott and Sashi Blackheart, where I think they're really good friends. That would be a dope tag team. I mean, that would be a dope tag team. But anywho, Tegan Nox is great too. So it's fine. So I'm looking forward to that because those women could really gain a lot even in defeat. So I'm definitely curious to see where they go there.
Yeah, but like I said, the only thing and we're gonna wrap things up momentarily here, but the only thing that frustrates me about that is the fact that you had the Iconics come out and make the challenge for a shot on Monday kind of makes you, and maybe they'll shock the world and they'll put the titles on Knox and Blackheart on Wednesday. But it almost makes you feel like that the match on Wednesday is just totally being overshadowed. Maybe that's the point where you're like, all right, they're overshadowing and maybe they can get upset because, they're just looking past it. But it almost makes you feel as an audience member that we're almost supposed to think that these people are so less than being on NXT that we're not supposed to even take them as a challenger seriously, Because we're already
there's a couple of things to that. One, Sashi Blackheart and Tegan Nox haven't been a tag team for long. So they they shouldn't win. They haven't been a tag team for long. The other aspect of it, one thing I always like when they do this with champions, when it's not just one feud. Everyone's gunning for the champion. You're the best, so everybody wants a piece of you. So you have multiple people. You're kind of involved in multiple feuds at once. So I like when they do that kind of layered booking. So although I agree with you, I think it takes maybe a little bit away from Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. I think a big reason for that is because they're in NXT. They're not an established tag team, things like that. But I still like that, hey, we're the champions. We got to defend these belts all the time, and we're targeted by everyone. It makes the belts mean more, in my opinion.
No, I don't disagree. I totally agree with you on that. It's going to be interesting seeing where they go and how things are going to go. And where we move forward with this,
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll see if we get any more positive tests and where we go as we come back on Friday for another episode where we'll talk.
Yeah, because Corey, we don't know. They're taping NXT when it's going to be a live show.
Well, live to tape, but on
live to tape. So I mean, we don't know how that show's going to look, right? One or two of these people test positive. Could they have a show
on Wednesday?
They may not have a show. So it's going to be, stay tuned for what happens here. It's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, we could see a lot more positive tests. I mean,
Corey, if you have, let me give you a scenario.
Sure.
And you tell me. They test people, 3 people in NXT have coronavirus. Do you think they still have the show?
Tomorrow? No.
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
I think they still have it.
Are you now? If it's publicly that people failed, or do you think are you saying that they hide the results for a day and they just do the show, or I mean, how can?
Well, if they hide, they can't hide the results because the people won't be on. Like if they have coronavirus, so say Shotzi Blackheart has coronavirus, she can't wrestle, but they could replace her.
Yeah, it's such a weird conversation to have there. Yeah, I think you just do a best of show. I think
that's what I would do. I would say you can't have, you have to quarantine people. You have to be responsible here. Have a best of for NXT. Have a best of for SmackDown. Have people quarantine.
I mean, you've already taped SmackDown.
You already taped SmackDown, so you quarantine and then you kind of figure it out. That's what I would do. But again, we're trying to be responsible and thinking about the responsible thing, which isn't everything that's been happening. So.
Yeah, so I think we went over a lot of interesting things this week. We'll be back on Friday with hopefully more information on any failed tests or more information on what WWE, AEW, New Japan are doing to go and combat, or more information in regards to COVID. But Jay, how about you let people know how they can follow us on Twitter and join the Facebook group and everything else?
Yeah, so I'm putting something up right now on Twitter, just letting people know that the shows that we're taping the show. So we're on Twitter at Worked Shoot Pod. We are Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. So you just type that into Google, you'll find us. Our Facebook page is Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Our Twitter's at Worked Shoot Pod, and you can just search in the box Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're also on YouTube, although hopefully it will be easier to find. I tried to type us into YouTube, and it came up with the CM Punk thing and a bunch of other things. But anyway, you can find us there. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify. So please leave a review on iTunes, 5 stars. We'll read it on the air. Yeah, that's it. Check us out. The Big Vito interview, it is coming. We promise you. And like I said, it's definitely an interesting look into how he views wrestling from his standpoint. But again, with everything going on and all this news breaking, we felt like it was important to have a show today.
Absolutely. So we'll have that show on Thursday. And of course, as always, check out our sister podcast starting year 2 this Wednesday. We'll be talking about the show Dead to Me. There will be spoilers. So once again, check out You Don't Know Jackie.
My wife likes that show.
Well, I've never seen it, so I guess.
So are they just gonna spoil it for you?
I've been spoiled. I've already heard it multiple times. I still have no idea what's going on, but apparently they grieve or something. I have no idea what's going on. But we will also, of course, have our good friend Jason Brooks on the program in the very near future, because we're going to be talking about the first 4 seasons of Insecure coming up, talking about why Issa is a terrible human being and how maybe she'll grow as the show goes along. But Jason, the final word, as always, is yours.
I think we're done here. See ya.